Don't lie to yourself. The reasons you prefer Apple or Android are wrong, just like every other decision in your life. You might rationalize how one thing is better in loads of ways, whether it's McDonald's or Burger King, Starbucks or toilet water, but really your swing vote comes down to less than 1% of overall decision making. Think about it. All smartphones have widgets and color icons. All fast food meat is processed, and all lattes are mostly milk. You're paying a $5 for warm milk. Anyway, my point is that the things I've listed are more alike than they are different, but it's that tiny difference that is the difference. And it's the same with men. The top 1% of us have most stuff in common, but the gap that separates the top 1% from the top 0.1% comes down to a few small things which compound to make huge differences. Think of it like the difference between driving a Lamborghini and a Formula One car. Both are faster than 99% of all other cars, but we know which one of the two is crossing the finish line first. By the end of this video, you'll know how to improve your personal development, mindset, wellness, connections, and your career. Just be sure to stick around for my secret tip that is guaranteed to separate you from the 99.9% of men who click away too soon. Okay, let's hit the ground running with fame and fortune. I mean career. Whatever you think of Tony Robbins, he does have one quote that resonates with me. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've already got. When I was starting my DJing career, I was making good decisions while balancing it alongside my full-time job as a doctor. But my initial strategy only worked for the initial stages. It took me a while to figure out when I needed to shake things up. The most game-changing action at every point of my career that has led to success has been getting rid of bad tools. Cal Newport explored this fallacy in his book, Deep Work, by investigating how a farmer increased his farm's profits by selling off equipment which others relied on. The idea is simple. Just because a tool exists doesn't mean you need it. But a 0.1% man will stand out by going one step further. A 0.1% man will take emotion out of the decision when it's time to change course. They don't get sentimental. Look at Mr. Beast. The moment he was earning money from his videos, he put it towards an editor. His logic was that even if the editor was only 80% as good as him at editing Mr. Beast style videos, he'd have more time to come up with ideas and execute them. Compare that to people who refuse to streamline their operation when they reach a certain level because they say, doing this is what got me here in the first place. Sure, but it's also the thing that's going to keep you there. And that's why it never hurts to think about branding early. Love it or loathe it, no one in the social media age can afford to develop their brand too late. But knowing who you are and what you're about takes more than just following clickbait trends. It takes introspection, experimentation, and commitment over months to years. Becoming a leader in medicine, music, and in the mental health spaces has all come about after being visible online. Because that's where people's eyeballs are. So that's where the opportunities are. Fine, you might not want to be seen as a typical Instagram influencer or TikToker. Yes, I think they could benefit everyone, but that's a conversation for another day. But what about LinkedIn, which is the place to build your professional network? Dig down deep into yourself about what you truly love doing and think about why. We're in this age of authenticity, so make sure the core of your brand is a true reflection of your ambitions and values. For 0.1% men, they figure out how to put their branding on everything. They also recognize how important it is to learn a new skill. See, a 1% man views gaining new skills as doing two important things: teaching yourself how to teach yourself and increasing your value to others. But 0.1% men play a meta game, building a complementing skill set. Coming up as a doctor and DJ had unique challenges because there was no roadmap to follow. My journey was littered with roadblocks, but being forced to learn content creation, marketing, mixing, project management, so on, gave me the edge over other DJs who might only focus on their music. Am I the best sound engineer in the world? No, but I don't need to be. Dilbert's Scott Adams points to himself as proof that a complementary skill set is sometimes better than mastering one skill. He admits he's not the best artist, the best writer, or the best business person, but he's better at drawing than most writers, and better at writing than most artists, and better at business than most people. He combined these skills to create Dilbert, thus earning him a fortune and the lifestyle we all dream of. Everyone knows why building a network is important. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So finding collaborators, peers, fans, and learning from your rivals can push your growth in stronger directions. But 0.1% men understand the difference between making connections and building connections. A lot of self-improvement stuff out there focuses on why you can't stray from your vision. Fair enough. But becoming complacent in your relationships means you're becoming complacent in an important area of your life. 0.1% men don't become complacent in any area. Are you showing up for the people who have been there for you? This is the one area I have struggled with the most. I wanted to be laser focused on my dream, especially when juggling my day job in the hospital with clubs, DJing, but I was taking my relationships for granted. My friends and family had kindly told me when I was letting them down, but I knew I couldn't rely on verbal cues from them. I had to take ownership for my role in the relationships. See, the top 0.1% men learn to reflect on how they show love to their friends and family, practicing picking up on non-verbal cues and subtle behaviors. Rather than waiting for my best friend to tell me that she's been struggling emotionally with work and her new relationship, I picked up on her shorter replies and her being less committal when making plans with me. I'm building the habit of looking out for these behaviors and being the person to check in, ask them specific questions, and make solid plans where we can just talk. After all, as Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers said, you can't make new old friends, which means you need to put the effort in with people who have shown up for you because they are irreplaceable. You also shouldn't treat people like cattle. Sometimes on our self-improvement journey, it's easy to view people as a number, especially when all we see of them is their profile picture on WhatsApp or Instagram. Your connection with someone doesn't need to provide immediate value to justify having them in your network. The 0.1% man nurtures new connections. I love this story that Warren Buffett tells of him asking an employee, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And the employee replied, still working for you. For the top 1% of men, that'd be the right answer. But Warren Buffett is above that. Warren Buffett responded that if his employee was still around in 5 years, he'd fire him. Like when a bird pushes the baby out of the nest, because it meant that the employee hadn't left to follow their own dream, which is a 0.1% trait. Guys, we are building an incredible community of people similar to us who want to improve their well-being and just have a great time during life. As a DJ, I throw parties for you guys in the most iconic locations in the world. So to stay up to date with my events and content, make sure you hit the subscribe button below and let me know in the comments who you are. I'm sure when it comes to fitness and physical health, we're all familiar with working out, eating right, blah, blah, blah. That's fine for the top 1%, but as a doctor, I can shed light on how to get more out of your fitness. Whereas most high-value men will know about a push-pull split, a 0.1% man won't rely on a program or personal trainer to do the heavy lifting for them. They'll train their weaknesses into strengths. Kobe Bryant is a prime example. He was already an NBA star when he decided to become the best of the best, but he didn't work on making his strengths even stronger. That's a 1% trick. Instead, he turned his weaknesses into formidable skills. He went from being a 3-point shooter to having incredible footwork and left-handed throws. And that pulled him up to the 0.1%. The same approach can be applied to diet. We all know our body needs the right fuel. It also needs treats. This isn't a rant against cake, but I do want to explain how relying on a conventional meal plan isn't going to make you a 0.1% man. Diet is more than the what, it's the why. Scott Adams might not be your go-to inspiration for a heavenly bod, but by learning about why foods are good to eat, he's been able to maintain his desired fitness level without effort. As he explains, if you don't know why pasta is a better simple carb than white potatoes, then it means you'll be unknowingly making ill-informed choices, especially in situations where you don't have control over what to eat. Like when you go to a wedding buffet or you have to choose food off the in-flight menu. Just because you eat chicken and brown rice over French fries and ice cream doesn't mean you've optimized your diet. A 0.1% man understands nutritional science. When they're at the wedding buffet or choosing from the in-flight menu, they can make the right choice without taxing their willpower of cognitive function. Whereas a 1% man will just blindly pick chicken and rice at every opportunity, not knowing how their fractional errors of judgment are compounding. For example, missing out on other important food groups. The easiest way to put you on the right path is to track your progress. When I'm finding time to put in the reps between hospital shifts and DJ sets, it can be easy to just turn up and go through a few motions in the gym. But this would be doing myself a disservice. By not carefully and honestly counting my progress, half reps don't count by the way, I won't actually know how well I'm doing. Of course, a routine is good. Every 1% man has a fitness regime, but you'll never see a 0.1% man on autopilot. They'll be recording their efforts, analyzing their performances, and fine-tuning their weaknesses by progressively overloading on those exercises each session, no matter what. As a doctor, I see patients having mental health battles all the time. It's great how society now takes mental health seriously, but there are still areas where self-improvement gurus do a disservice. Most videos on how to be a 1% man talk about suppressing emotions or ignoring them, or not having them. Okay, you have to give the devil his due. Emotions cloud judgment, but what 0.1% men understand is that emotions can also drive judgment. Take Muhammad Ali. When another kid stole his bike, he was so angry, he went looking for the culprit. Thankfully, he refocused that emotional energy by joining a boxing gym. He didn't quell that emotion, he harnessed it. And years later, when his career was impeded by politics, he had to redirect his emotions again. In that situation, a 1% man might have used his rightful indignation to start fights with those who had crossed him, metaphorically of course. Or worse, they would ignore that emotion and keep it buried, which risks resurfacing in devastating ways. But Ali was a 0.1% man. As bitter as he was, he let that emotion guide him back to his why. He diverted that energy into political activism and devoted more time to his faith. There's this interesting relationship between athletes and calm minds. Some athletes actually swear by cold showers or ice baths for mental clarity. Yes, the evidence is still early days, but some research shows that cold showers are good for your skin, hair, immunity, and for helping you wake up in the morning. But don't try this if you have any heart or breathing problems. But what I've noticed is the men who never hesitate getting under Arctic cold water in the morning do tend to hesitate in other areas of life. Think about how often you've put off replying to an email even though it will only take 2 minutes. 2 minutes is the threshold for whether or not an action requires immediate attention, according to David Allen in his book, Getting Things Done. Tim Ferriss demonstrates his ability to never balance action and clear thinking in his book, The 4-Hour Workweek. His business was young, but some of his clients were so difficult that he took it on the chin until one day the stress got too much. So he told his difficult clients to change their behavior or find someone else. How many people out there would fire a client? But by biting the bullet, Ferriss kept the good clients, lost the bad ones, and maintained his sanity. If you're someone who needs help with clear thinking and emotional regulation, try Stoicism. It's the grandfather of all self-improvement philosophies. It kills your ego, it tempers your emotions, it improves your resolve. All thanks to a simple yet powerful maxim of accepting the things you can't change, having the courage to change the things you can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I admit, that's a bit of a simplification. Yet we miss the opportunity to utilize Stoicism to its fullest by using it to temper our failures, rather than using it to recall success in what we have. Look how Thomas Edison acted when his laboratory burnt to the ground. Edison had been amassing a life's work of research, inventions, and experiments, but it all turned to ash within a moment. When witnesses asked Edison how he could be so calm, he said, "It's all right. We've just got rid of a lot of rubbish." Aren't 1% men like that? No. Here's the difference. A 1% man knows Edison lost everything. A 0.1% man understands that Edison gained a chance to start again. On a day-to-day basis, I post stories on my Instagram showing you my lifestyle and tips as a doctor and DJ. Make sure you follow me on there after this video and drop me a DM. Naval Ravikant said that if you can't be content with a cup of coffee, you won't be content with anything. So why do we find it so hard to be present? Everyone knows how great meditation is. I don't need a medical degree to preach its benefits. But the 0.1% find ways for mindfulness without having to schedule a time to sit in the lotus position. I recently heard how Chris Williamson of the Modern Wisdom podcast uses his time stuck in traffic to check in with his body. At red light, he'll feel the perforations on the steering wheel. When he's washing up, he'll feel the water on his hands. I think that's a great antidote to the grind set approach where inner peace is gamified. But maybe I'm biased because as a doctor, I'm always on my feet and never really get the chance to block off sections of time during my shift. And sometimes when I'm DJing, I'm caught up with the pressure and mechanics of mixing to be able to be there in the moment with the crowd. If you're struggling to practice mindfulness, then consider spiritually grounding yourself in God or the universe. It's good to have something to keep you orientated and to believe in. Be aware though, 1% men tend to only rely on the positives of a guiding force. Kind of like being a Catholic because you like Christmas, but never going to confession. And this brings me on to my next point. 0.1% men seek out criticism and implement it. Just last week, when I was in India, I stopped by a tarot card reader, not for the magical part, but to get an external, unbiased view. I thought of it as an alternative self-development tool to measure my progress towards my goals. Yes, I was anxious that she'd say things that rubbed me up the wrong way or pick up on weaknesses that I'd be reluctant to change. Instead, we had a great chat and I left feeling more clarity. Since then, I've actually worked on implementing the changes she came up with. Well, the sensible ones, obviously. For other ways to rejuvenate your soul, turn to nature. Cal Newport also laid out the studies which prove a nature walk is better for concentration and reducing stress than a stroll in the city, because you don't have to exert as much unconscious willpower. There's no traffic to dodge in the forest. Even Carl Jung took long walks in nature every day. No Spotify, no scrolling, just him walking alone in silence. And I mean long walks for hours. He credits it with being vital in turning out his momentous volume of valuable work. The ability to be alone is one of the defining ways to separate the 1% from the 0.1%. The former treat it like a means to an end. The latter see it as a virtue in and of itself. Cal Newport's book also lays out the case for being able to enter flow state by training yourself to work more deeply. In my own creative projects, I've developed my ability to focus for longer stretches of time. I have to. Being in scrub so often means that every moment out of them has to be used to its fullest potential. But notice the difference. A 1% man will grind and grind, believing it's volume of hours that will make the difference. Whereas a 0.1% man understands it's the quality of the hours. Picasso made multiple paintings a day, but it wasn't because he just sat in his chair all the time. Yes, he had a time slot to sit there and pick up the paintbrush, but he also knew he had a clocking off time, and everything in between was about being focused. One way to help this is with spatial consciousness. James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, makes the case for associating different places in your house for different tasks to make it easier to snap into action. Bed for sleeping, desk for working. The moment you work in your bed, your mind will start to associate it with being active. And that's probably why you're not sleeping. Yet there's room to fine-tune this process to push you into the 0.1%. For example, does your drinking bottle have a cap on it? If you have a cap, you're risking losing focus every time you have to consciously remove it. You don't have to be like Albert Einstein or Mark Zuckerberg by having a wardrobe exclusively of the same items to spare you making decisions in the morning, but you do need to find ways to streamline your environment. Speaking of efficiency, here's the last point I promised you. This one gets overlooked all the time. Learn to communicate. You could be the most successful, wealthy entrepreneur, but if you pitch your business idea saying like, you are not as articulate as you think. Noam Chomsky says, if you can't explain it in monosyllables, then you can't explain it at all. Anyone can learn how to sound smart by copying how other people are talking. But by making the habit of being more articulate, your ideas will be clearer. And the clearer your ideas, the better your actions. And the better your actions, the greater the success. Take the time to learn how to pronounce words correctly. Brush up on your grammar to clarify your sentence structure. Practice breathing to control your tempo. Resist crutch phrases and common buzzwords. John Carmack is probably the world's best computer programmer. He's a pioneer in VR, made Doom, and even built space rockets as a side hustle. Yet, he can explain complicated computer science ideas to a child. And speaking of expressing yourself, let me know in the comments which of these habits in the whole video has been the most impactful for you. Let's make this community a place to help each other grow. If you want to level up your success even more, you need to build a solid foundation for your mental health and well-being. I made this video on screen here, about the smallest simple changes that you could implement to transform your well-being. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.